chapter 10. We're going to be finishing up our series on the dark history of the Roman Catholic Church. And this has probably been the meanest sermon series I've preached, but there's been a lot of information to learn. But quite honestly, it's not just within worldwide there's a dark history of the Roman Catholic Church. Even in just our country itself, there's a very dark history with the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that today. Now, I want you to keep your place in Matthew 10, but I want you to go to Romans 8 real quickly. Romans 8. And in Romans chapter 8, we're going to look at the verse that was the verse in our bulletin. In Romans chapter 8, verse 28, where the Bible reads, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose." And so in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, the Bible says that things will work together for good to those that love God. That does not mean that everything in your life goes well.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you have just a great job and lots of money and great health, but things work out for good if you do love God.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean your life's going to be blessed, but it's going to be for the greater good. Okay? And sometimes we go through a lot of trials in our life and it's really tough, but things do work together for good if you love God. Okay? Now, when it comes to the dark history of the Roman Catholic Church in our country, it really starts with Ferdinand Magellan and Lapu-Lapu in the Battle of Mactan. Okay? Now, in the bulletin, you notice I just have a generic picture, and the reason why is because there was a lot of cool pictures of Lapu-Lapu killing Magellan, but he's basically naked.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to find a picture where he was actually, wearing clothes and killing Magellan. I couldn't find that. So I just kind of have a generic picture in the bulletin. But the dark history starts with that battle when Magellan and his men came here. Now, I want you to understand what is the proper perspective for us as Christians, as believers, okay? Because quite honestly, if Magellan had never come here, then quite honestly, this would not be a receptive country. Because before that, Lapu-Lapu was basically some sort of Muslim, okay? Look, the fact that this country is so receptive, a large reason is because it's Catholic. Because don't Catholics get saved really easy? Right. Who would you rather preach the gospel to, a Catholic or a Muslim? Catholic,
yeah.
Right? Look around the world at the really receptive countries. By and large, they're usually Catholic countries, okay? So things worked out for good for people that are soul winners. It's a good thing. But at the same time, it's still very wicked what Ferdinand Magellan and his men did.
Yeah.
Okay? So look, I'm not praising Lapu-Lapu as a hero because by all accounts, we know that he was an unbeliever. And he's in hell today. And I can't call someone who is an unbeliever a hero. As a soul winner, as a Christian, if I'm going to look at heroes outside of the Lord Jesus Christ, I look at Paul the Apostle, I look at John the Baptist, I look at people that were martyred for what they believed.
Right.
People that were good people that stood up for the things of God. Okay?
Yeah.
So basically you have two wrong sides. Okay? Lapu-Lapu was not a believer, but what Ferdinand Magellan did in Spain, you don't just come into a country and then just take over and force people to convert.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrong. Okay? And powerful countries do that all the time. It's wrong, though. It's not your country. You don't have the right to do that. And so let's talk a little bit about this history. Now, turn back to Matthew 10. Back to Matthew 10. And as every sermon, I'll prove everything from the Bible. We'll see what the Bible says about this. Now, one thing you need to understand is we do not have an historical account from Lapu-Lapu's men or from Humaboom's men. It was one of the other big men involved in the battle. The only account we have is from a man called Antonio Pigafetta. He was one of Ferdinand Magellan's men, okay? So whenever you're looking at situations and you only have one side of the story, realize it's not even going to be 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Look, if two people get in a fight and you're one side of the story, it's going to be a slanted side.
Right.
Because that's the way things work. And look, throughout history, when there's a battle between countries and you really only hear one side of the argument, it's going to give you a slanted perspective. The only side we have is from Ferdinand Magellan and his men. Okay? But even in their own account, what they did was evil. Okay? Basically, they came here, and they went to other parts of the island first, and they basically said that you need to convert and just give tribute to Spain, convert to Catholicism, get baptized in this new religion. Okay? Now, let me ask you a question. When you preach the gospel to people, can you force them to get saved?
No.
Or do they have to make a free will choice if they believe? They have to make a free will choice. And so they basically came here and said, you must get baptized. Well, that's not salvation. So
Yeah.
that's their version of of salvation. But basically, you must be baptized and just embrace Spain and embrace Catholicism. You say, well, it's just a battle between nations. No, because when you look at Catholicism, it's morphed into these powerful countries.
Right.
They tie together, okay? And so this goes along with Catholicism. So basically, they said you must convert. You must be baptized. You must give tribute to Spain, to some king you've never met before. We just got here, and now we demand you give us money, okay? And so basically, a lot of people went along with it, probably because they were in fear they would be killed. But Lapu-Lapu and his men, they rejected it. And so Ferdinand Magellan and his men went to the island, and they just thought they'd just come in and just kill everyone and take over very easily. They said, pay tribute, or, we're going to fight. And basically, according to Antonio Pigafetta, he said there was around 60 men of Ferdinand Magellan versus 1,500 men of Lapu-Lapu. That's their account. Now, when I listen to that account, I'm thinking, man, Magellan's praised as a hero, but he's kind of vocal. I mean, you have 60 men, and you're going to fight 1,500 men? That's their version of the account. And look, to me, that sounds pretty stupid. Of course you're going to lose that battle. And so basically, they had armor above. They had no armor on the legs. So Lapu-Lapu and his men, they basically shot poison arrows at the legs. And then the arrows hitting the legs is what caused him to fall to the ground and die. Okay? Now, from what I understand, supposedly Lapu-Lapu was around 70 years old at this time. So I understand we have the pictures where he's just like ripped. He goes to the gym for like 3 hours a day. He's got a six-pack and he's killing Ferdinand Magellan. That's probably not that accurate, though. He was probably just kind of leading the battle from afar. It's a cool picture. It's a cool statue in Resolve Park, but it's probably not all that accurate. Right. From a Christian perspective, though, you can't just come to a country and force them to convert and just take over. It's not your country. You say, what are you talking about? Well, notice what it says in Matthew 10, verse 11. And into whatsoever city or town ye shall enter, inquire when it is worthy, and there abide till ye go thence. And it says that when you go to a city or town or even a country, find out who is worthy. You say, well, what does that mean? Well, notice what it says in verse number 12. And when you come into a house, salute it. And so we knock on a door, we come to a house, we're very respectful, we're very kind, we're very friendly, we're very courteous. We do not try to get in arguments out stolen. Okay? It's rude to go to someone's house and just argue with them. Now, I understand from time to time they will want to argue with us, and guess what? That means they will not get saved.
Right.
So you go to the next house. You say, well, why do you say that? Because you're supposed to find out who is worthy. What does it mean to be worthy? Well, notice verse 13. And if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it be not worthy, let your peace return to you. So once again, if it's worthy, you let your peace come onto it. What does that mean? It doesn't mean like the Catholics do, like, peace be with you, and shake hands and stuff like that. That's not what it's talking about.
Right.
And the Catholics just don't understand this passage. What it means is the gospel of peace.
Yeah.
And if a house is worthy, you present the gospel of peace. If it's not worthy, you don't present the gospel of peace. You don't let your peace come upon it. Verse 14, what does it mean to be worthy? And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when you depart out of that house or city, shake off the dust of your feet. So you knock on a door, you try to preach the gospel, they're not interested, you leave. You go to another house.
Yeah.
You depart. Shake off the dust of your feet. What you don't do is say, well, we're going to fight you if you don't convert. You must pay tribute, you must get baptized as a Catholic and change your religion and convert to us. You don't do that as a Christian.
Yeah.
Look, us as soul winners, if people don't hear our message, we go on to the next door.
Yeah.
And so when they came down here, I know they came on a really long journey, but it's like, go take your Catholicism back to Spain with you.
Right.
We don't want it here. Now here's the thing. Like I said, it's a good thing that Catholicism took over, because it makes it easy to preach the gospel. It worked out for good, but what they did was still wicked.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't just come into an area and force people to convert and then just fight them or kill them if they don't. Look, most people don't want to hear the gospel. Do you realize how many murder charges we would have if we just killed every single person that didn't convert to being Christian, to getting saved? Look, if they reject it, you move on to the next door. That's not what Spain did, though. They basically said, you must convert, and they tried to force them to, and then they lost the battle, and then they just went back to Spain and came back later on. Turn to Matthew 22. Matthew 22. And it's kind of an interesting thing that happens in history, that when enough time goes by, you have two opposing sides and they're both looked at as heroes. It's really bizarre how that takes place. Because if you were to ask people, they would look at Lapu-Lapu as a hero, but a lot of them would look at Magellan as a hero as well. It's like, well, they can't really both be heroes.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, they kind of were completely opposite from one another. How could they both be heroes? Now, us as Bible-believing Christians, I don't really look at either one as a hero. Because I'm not Catholic, and I'm not Muslim either.
Yeah.
And look, I'm definitely not Catholic. I mean, if you've been here for this sermon series, but Catholicism is a whole lot closer to Christianity than Islam.
Right.
That's the reason why Catholics get saved a lot easier, because they already believe in the Trinity. They already believe that Jesus was perfect and Jesus is God. Muslims certainly don't believe that. But I mean, obviously, they're still a long ways away from the truth. So you got two sides that are both wrong. They work together for good to us that are soul winners, because it makes this country a very free country to preach the gospel. Go anywhere else in Asia and see if you have the same success. This is by far the most receptive country in Asia. You say why? Because it's a Catholic country.
Right.
There are plenty of countries that don't have a lot of money that are poor countries. There are plenty of countries that are poorer than this country. Plenty of Buddhist countries. But guess what? Buddhists reject the gospel.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear the gospel. It's a very receptive country because Catholicism came in. But that doesn't mean that what they did was righteous or good. It was still wicked what they did.
Yeah.
Matthew 22, verse 17. Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why tempt ye hypocrites? Show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. So basically Jesus is saying, well, let's see the coins and see who's in charge of that area. And the person that's in charge, you have to go by the law of the land and pay tribute to them. Okay? Verse 20, and he saith unto them, Whose is this image and superscription? They say unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. Okay? So basically Jesus says, if you live in a country and they own the country and they ask you to pay tribute, you pay tribute. Guess what? Pull up the coin during Magellan's time in Lapu-Lapu. It doesn't have the King of Spain on it.
Yeah.
This wasn't their country. So they ask you to pay tribute. No! It's not your country.
Yeah.
You can't just come in here and say, you owe us money. How do we owe you money? This isn't your country. You can't just take over violently by force and demand people to pay money. It's not your country. You don't own the country. Let's pull out the coin and see whose image is on it. It wasn't the King of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And so guess what? No, they shouldn't have had to pay tribute to some king they never met, of a false religion, some empire trying to take over. Why would they have to pay money? And so look, the dark history starts with the Battle of Bactan, because what Ferdinand Magellan and his men did was wrong. They didn't have a right to just come in here and force people to take over. Turn to Acts 7. Acts 7. Now look, I'm by no means embracing the native religions and Islam and what it was before Ferdinand Magellan and his men came here. Like you see all the pictures, look, they should have been wearing decent clothes and covering up their bodies. Now in the Philippines, we're going back to that time period. Because, people are wearing less and less and less clothes. But yeah, you know what, they weren't following the laws of the Bible, so there was a lot of problems, okay? But the perception that's given is a really wicked perception, because Ferdinand Magellan, outside of this country, is considered a hero, and basically everybody else were a bunch of savages and wicked people. When you hear anybody talk about this outside of the Philippines, that is what they're going to tell you. That basically, Ferdinand Magellan is a hero, and then everybody who lived here were a bunch of savages. That's what they'll say. Basically, everyone was a bunch of dumb savages, and Ferdinand Magellan was a hero. Well, I'm sorry, but when I see this story, I see that a wicked person's coming in to take over by force, and I don't really look at them as being that smart when I look at the story. Now, they're known as discovering the Philippines. Look, there's already people that lived here. Right? It's like just like Christopher Columbus discovered America, even though there's people that already lived there.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't just come into a country and just take over. Ferdinand Magellan is not a hero.
Yeah.
Okay? And look, I will tell you that around the world, he is considered a hero. But when you read what he did was not a good thing. What he did was not a godly thing. Now, as a soul winner, I'm happy Catholicism took over, but it doesn't mean that I agree with what he did. It's just that God allowed it to be used for good.
Right.
Because now we have an open country to preach the gospel. There's
Right.
a difference. Okay? As soul winners, we should not look at either one as heroes, because guess where they both are right now? In hell.
Yep.
They're not our heroes. Okay? It's an event where basically, there's two sides that are wrong, but especially Magellan's side, what they did was wicked, but honestly it works together for good for us. Okay? In Acts chapter 7, so we talked about Ferdinand Magellan and Lapu-Lapu. Let's move on to Jose Rizal. Okay? Let me say right up front, once again, I'm not praising Jose Rizal. Because you look at the history of Jose Rizal, he had a lot of women that he committed adultery with. Okay, so once again, as believers, Bible believers and soul winners, we don't embrace someone who is just an open adulterer.
Right. Yep.
And by all indications of what he believed, he wasn't saved either.
Right.
Okay? They say that he was a Mason, that he kind of rejected Catholicism, but at the same time, it's not like he embraced being a fundamental Baptist.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wouldn't call him a hero either. This is, like I said, the least politically correct sermon. Because every hero I'm saying was bad. Okay? But when it comes to people being famous, aren't most famous people bad?
Right.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Look, I don't look at Jose Rizal as a hero either. Okay? But at the same time, I look at the Catholic Church that was fighting against him and killed him, and they're certainly wrong as well. Once again, this is coming from Spain. And when I think of Jose Rizal dying, it reminds me of Acts 7, verses 51 and 52. I understand that this is not talking about him, okay? But it reminded me of this. In Acts 7, verse 51 and 52, ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, ye do always resist the Holy Ghost as your fathers did, so do ye. Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted? And they have slain them which showed before the coming of the just one, of whom ye have been now the betrayers and murderers. And so my question about Catholicism, of which of the heroes of the Philippines have you not tried to kill? I mean, you tried to kill Lapu-Lapu, and you killed Jose Rizal. Which of the heroes of the Philippines have you not tried to kill? Now, what I do not understand is you go to Rizal Park, and you see two statues, don't you? You see a statue of Lapu-Lapu, who hated Catholicism. You see a statue of Jose Rizal, who hated Catholicism. And then you have 80% of this country that says, Lapu-Lapu is a hero, Jose Rizal is a hero, and I bow down before the Pope and kiss his feet. I mean, does that make any sense?
No.
You can't make them all of your heroes.
Yeah.
If you're Catholic, you must reject Lapu-Lapu. If you're Catholic, you must reject Jose Rizal.
Right.
Because they spoke against your religion. They were against Catholicism. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You can't be a fan of both of them if you're a Catholic. Now look, if you're not Catholic, like me, or all of us in this room, you can reject all of the sides.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's possible in a war or a battle that both sides are wrong. But what's not possible is that both sides are right.
Yeah.
You can't say that you embrace Catholicism and yet Jose Rizal is your hero.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense because he spoke against Catholicism. You can't embrace Lapu-Lapu as a hero. You take that selfie in front of the big statue of Rizal Park. It's like, man, I love Lapu-Lapu, but I love Ferdinand Magellan. I just love everybody. Let's just love everybody. No, you can't. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so when they both rejected Catholicism, how are they the heroes of this country? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if this country is Catholic. It really doesn't make sense to say that you love Lapu-Lapu, he's a hero, but you're glad that Ferdinand Magellan tried to kill him and now you're Catholic. You can't take both sides. It doesn't make any sense. And quite honestly, when it comes to the heroes of the Philippines, the Catholic Church has tried, and on some occasions successfully, killed the heroes of this country. Turn to 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 18. I mean, I have no doubt that one day they'll declare Jose Rizal a saint of the Catholic Church. Because throughout history, this is what the Catholic Church does. They kill people, and then later on, oh, we declare him a saint. He's one of ours. You killed him. It's like, what are you talking about? But they do that because of the fact they want to make it look, but it was just a big misunderstanding. That's an unfortunate situation, that we murdered him. It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I'm sure they're going to declare him a saint one day because they'll try to basically, take credit for him. There's a lot of people that hundreds of years after rejecting the Catholic Church were all of a sudden declared a saint of the Catholic Church, throughout history. And so, anyways, preparing this sermon, actually, let me read you a quote from our President Duterte. And he said, "Ang tingin ko kay Rizal, talagang God, he's my hero and others also. Filipinos who died for the nation. Rizal stood against the Roman Catholic Church. He died for our country. He was shot. And then these Filipinos will go to the church and kneel down." He makes a valid point.
Yep.
I mean, now, obviously I disagree because he's not like a god to me. Okay? Obviously I reject that. But, he makes a pretty valid point. It's like, why are you mindlessly kneeling down at the Catholic Church and yet Jose Rizal's your hero? Exactly what I'm saying. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay? Now in 1 Kings chapter 18, let's look at verses 20 and 21. And in 1 Kings chapter 18, you see the famous story where Elijah is standing against the false prophets of Baal. You got two opposite sides from one another. And in 1 Kings 18, verse 20, "So Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel, and gathered the prophets together on the Mount Carmel. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word." So basically Elijah says, you've got two sides. Either embrace the false prophets of Baal, or embrace the Lord God above. Don't sit in between both sides and say you agree with both.
Right.
And honestly, that's the same situation where it's basically like, pick your side. If you're Catholic, if that's your religion, they are not your heroes. They can't be your heroes and yet you're Catholic. It does not make any sense. You must pick a side. How long halt ye between two opinions? Now, it's possible to reject both sides, though, because I'm not Catholic, I'm not Muslim, I'm not a Mason. I reject all of those religions.
Right.
Okay? Look, in our country, false religions battle it out all the time, and both of them are wrong. Okay? That's what takes place. But look, it does not make sense to bow down at a Catholic church and say, I'm a Catholic, and yet you also bow down before Jose Rizal and Lapu Lapu and Rizal Farm. Turn to John 20. John 20. And so Jose Rizal wrote two famous books. One of them was in 1887 and one was in 1891. And in 1887 he wrote Noli Me Tangere, which translates to touch me not. And it's basic, or he gets this from John 20:17 where there's this phrase, touch me not. But it's basically a name meant for a cancer. And basically what he was saying is that Catholicism in Spain is like a cancer. That's what Jose Rizal wrote in his book. Okay? Now, it's required, as far as I know, required reading in schools here. The problem is they change the words. They translate to another language, and they just make a lot of changes. This is actually a pretty common thing in books, when they put them in another language. I remember reading a famous historical book, and then all of a sudden, I was listening to the audio book, and there was like this quote of someone saying, billions of years or something like that, which would imply evolution. And then the narrator stops in the audiobook and says, actually, in the original translation, it was like 1,000 years. But we believe the more correct rendering is billions of years. And it's like they just changed it. They completely changed the meaning. They do that very often. And so what the Catholic Church does is very clever. Basically, get them to read the book, and you feel like you're reading exactly what all of his complaints were, but it's actually a changed message. It's a watered-down message of what was actually taking place. They do that all the time. I saw a documentary recently on Martin Luther, who rejected the Catholic Church, and one of the people that was giving his opinion was a Catholic priest. And it's like, look, he stood against the Catholic Church, and yet a Catholic priest is acting as if Martin Luther is one of their own. No, it's like he rejected once he went to Rome and saw how wicked you were.
Right.
And it's like, it doesn't make any sense, but they make a lot of changes. Now, in John 20, verse 17, the Bible reads, Jesus saith unto her, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and my God and your God. So this is the verse where he gets the inspiration for the book. And let me just read this to you. On the other hand, Spanish friars were vilified in nationalist literature, the most influential of all being Jose Rizal's books, which told stories of corruption in the priesthood and which was banned in Catholic schools well into the 20th century. So Jose Rizal, when he was alive, he wrote against the Catholic Church, and it was illegal to read those books or have those books. And schools were not allowed to read them. Now they've changed because they changed the words and because they're trying to make it look like it's just a big misunderstanding. Protestant Reformation, big misunderstanding. You know, the Great Schism with the Orthodox Church, just a big misunderstanding. We're all on the same side. You know, all these people were killed, just a big misunderstanding. You know, Jose Rizal, just a big misunderstanding. It's like, no, it wasn't a misunderstanding. He was preaching against you. He was writing against you, and then you ended up killing him. Now, once again, I'm not embracing Jose Rizal because I don't think he was a godly person, and I don't think he's in heaven. But there's no doubt that he was preaching against the Catholic Church.
Right.
And the Catholic Church tried to censor it for a long time. And if you can't completely censor it, what you do is act as if, you know, it's no big deal and you just change it. Okay? This is what they do with modern Bible versions.
Right.
They can't get you to stop reading the pure Word of God. They couldn't get rid of the King James Bible. So how do we confuse people? Oh, let's just create like 100 versions. Right. And, you know, act like we're not trying to censor the King James Bible. Right. In reality, what are they trying to do? Trying to censor the King James Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what the devil does to try to basically trick you. Basically, well, we're not making it illegal to read the King James Bible, but here's a version that's so much easier for you to understand. I mean, it's so much simpler because the King James is so archaic. You know, like that phrase, to start the King James Bible in the beginning, it's so hard to understand in the beginning. I mean, I'm so confused on what that means. You know, a child can never understand in the beginning. It's so hard to understand. It's so difficult. So that is what they do. Then in 1891, he wrote a book called El Filibusterismo. And it says here, Rizal said that the practices which the church considered religious have no relevance for true religion. Such practices include image worship, the use of religious objects such as candles, holy water, incense, rosaries, and scapularies. I don't even know what a scapulary is. What is a scapulary? Does anybody know? No? It's just something the Catholic Church does. I don't even know what that is. There's a lot of vain traditions of the Catholic Church. Meaningless use of prayers, working of miracles, making the sign of the cross, and kissing the hands of the priest. Kissing the hands of the priest? I mean, what in the world? At least they're not kissing his feet. Like with the Pope, you got to go bow down and kiss the feet. I guess kissing the hand is not as bad as kissing the feet. Okay? Wasteful giving of money to the church, careless confession, and even such practices so integral to Catholic doctrine as the Mass and the granting of indulgences. Indulgences where you pay the church money to get your relative out of hell or out of purgatory. So basically, Jose Rizal said they've got all these vain traditions, and they don't make sense. They're not biblical. They're wrong. Holy water, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Now look, the truth is that the majority of Catholics agree with that.
Yeah.
They agree with that.
Yeah.
But they don't want to say anything because they're afraid of persecution.
Yeah.
That's the truth. I mean, throughout the age, everybody thinks what the Pope does in the Catholic Church is weird. They know it doesn't make sense. No, I don't really believe that that cracker turns into like the body of Jesus inside of you when you're eating at our Holy Communion. They don't really believe in holy water. That if they touch that, it's going to give them something special. I mean, some do. But a lot of people do not. But honestly, they just don't want to speak against the Catholic Church.
Right.
And they speak against the Catholic Church, they could end up dead. Why? Because the Catholic Church has a habit of killing people that disagree with them.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of what the doctrine is. It's just that you are forced to go along with the rules. They want you to obey the rules no matter what they are. You say, why do you say that? Because the Catholic Church has changed their doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
The Pope said he doesn't believe in hell. And so guess what? One day it might be considered evil if you believe in hell. And you cannot question that there is no hell when once they used to teach that there was a hell. And if you're not Catholic, you go there. Now everybody goes to heaven and there is no hell. They completely changed what they believe.
Right, yeah.
It's not a matter of what they believe. It's just a matter of you must embrace their doctrine and go along with what they say. You cannot question authority. And that's what Jose Rizal was doing when he wrote this book. There are two bases for Rizal's criticism of these practices. First, that many of these practices are merely schemes for making money. Mm-hmm. Basically, the church just is trying to steal money from you. Well, yeah, everybody knows that. Right.
Yeah.
It's obvious they're just trying to steal money from you. And second, that they lack spiritual effectiveness. there are so many so-called religious practices that are just externals and have no meaningful relationship to the life of man. There's another criticism which we can consider as a third basis, and this is that the practices of the Roman Catholics are too costly for a poor man to bear. So basically, people that have less money, they can't afford to get their relative out of hell. So their relative gets stuck in hell because it's like, I don't have any money to help my relative get out of hell. And it's like, basically, these practices are too expensive for them. I don't have enough money for my child to get baptized as an infant. Because you have to basically give a donation to the Catholic Church. And it's like, you don't give any money. It's like, well, wait a minute. Where's that free will donation that you're giving us? You know, at least 2,000 pesos. Okay? If you don't have the money, it's going to make it tough to do all those rituals. Look, we don't charge anybody to get baptized in this church.
Right.
Why would you charge money? That's what the Catholic Church has always done. So he spoke against the Catholic Church, and what ended up happening to Jose Rizal? He was killed by the Catholic Church. So tell me how you embrace Catholicism in this country when you also embrace Jose Rizal as your hero and Lapu Lapu as your hero. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And so those are some of the famous people in history, Lapu Lapu and Jose Rizal. And you can go into more detail and look at other people. But basically, people have always spoken against the Catholic Church because they know it's a fraud. They know it's fake.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you speak against it, you can be in a dangerous situation. Okay? Now, in today's world, the Catholic Church is not as powerful as it used to be. But quite honestly, there was times in the past where if you write a book against the Catholic Church, then you could very easily be killed. Okay? And that's what happened to Jose Rizal. But let's just talk about in the Philippines, the sexual scandals that have happened just in the Philippines through the years. Okay? 1 Corinthians 5, verses 9 through 13. I wrote on you in an epistle not to company with fornicators, yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or with idolaters, for then must he needs go out of the world. But now I have written on you not to keep company, if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, with such an one know not to eat. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do not ye judge them that are within? But them that are without, God judges. Therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person. And see, the Bible here is talking about church discipline. And if somebody is living basically a wicked life, they're supposed to be put out from you. That's what the Bible teaches. So if somebody is called a brother, if somebody is a drunkard, just an open drunkard, where everybody knows they're drunk, and yet they're in this church all the time, and it's like, oh yeah, I just got back from getting drunk last night. The Bible says that person is not welcome at the church.
Right.
Okay? Now I want you to understand the difference we have here. When I get somebody saved out soul winning, you don't expect them to be perfect on everything. You might get somebody saved who's living with their girlfriend. You might get somebody saved who's living with their boyfriend. But those people are welcome to visit this church. You say, why? Because they just got saved. They don't know any better. There's a time period where they have a chance to grow and make changes. But look, if they choose to reject that and choose to live a wicked lifestyle, the Bible says they're not welcome at the church. You say, why? Because it's teaching the young kids the wrong message.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? It's teaching my son and the other kids in this church that, oh, maybe it's okay to be a drug addict. Maybe it's okay to be a drunk. That's not the message we're trying to teach these kids. Now, I'm not saying that if somebody accidentally makes a mistake, does something wrong, or man, somebody who used to drink a lot, maybe, for example, oh man, I got drunk last night, feel guilty about it. No, we're talking about someone who's like an open drunkard. Everybody's aware of it. They do it. They don't care what anybody thinks. The Bible says, those people are not welcome at church. So there's a chance to grow, but eventually it reaches a point where you've got to make a decision. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that you have to be sinless, because obviously we're all sinners.
Right.
But I'm talking about sins that are very evident and known to everybody. It's like a scandal. People would look at it and just think, hey, we're hypocrites here at this church. Well, here's my question. With the Catholic priests, they're the ones involved in the scandals. We're not talking about a church member. We're talking about the Catholic priests here in the Philippines. They're the ones involved in the scandals, and yet they still keep running that church.
Right.
It's like, what in the world? Now look, in this passage it talks about that you have to go outside the world to avoid people like this, because you go to your job and there's people that commit a lot of different sins. Right. You've got to work, you've got to be around the world, you can't avoid it, okay? But in church, it's supposed to be a safe haven from police. Right. It's different, okay? But with the Catholic Church, their priests are involved in this. There's something known as the Code of Omerta. Who knows that phrase, the Code of Omerta? It's basically a way of saying hiding scandals. And basically, in the Philippines, they have officially adopted it in the Catholic Church as the Catholic Code of Omerta in the Philippines. What that basically means is, when there's a big scandal, you're forced to be quiet about it and let the church deal with it. That's what it boils down to. So basically, if there's a scandal that one of the kids says, the priest molested me, based on what the Philippines teaches, that they embrace the Catholic Code of Omerta, you're not allowed to say anything about it. You're supposed to keep hush-hush and let the Catholic Church deal with it. Basically, a code of silence. Basically, the church is above any sort of discipline or anything bad happening. You cannot question the Holy Father in your church. That's what they're saying, okay? Let me go through a quick list of the scandals through the years, and I just pulled out a bunch that you could find. You could find every single year there's tons of scandals. In 2002, the Catholic Church apologized for sexual abuses, including adultery, homosexuality, and child abuse by 200 priests over the previous 20 years in Asian Pacific countries. Asian Pacific countries, what's the country in the Asian Pacific that is more Catholic than any other country? The Philippines. The majority of those 200 are here in the Philippines. They basically apologize, hey, we're sorry that, our holy men of God are a bunch of molesters and sodomites and all this other stuff. And look, you have to understand, when the Catholic Church has to publicly, from Rome, apologize about it, it means it's a big scandal that's taking place. Right. Because you'd rather just avoid it, but they can't avoid it because everybody's aware. In 2003, 1 year later, at least 34 priests were suspended in a sex abuse scandal involving sexual harassment of women. 20 men were from a single diocese. 20 men in one area. Basically, all the priests were involved in it. Every single one. Can you imagine if all of the Baptist pastors were involved in a big scandal together like this? Every single one. Every Bible Baptist pastor. Every single one. Okay? Can you imagine that? I mean, that's what's going on when 20 from one diocese. In 2011, a priest accused of sexually abusing a 17-year-old female minor was sheltered by his bishop despite calls for a surrender to civil authorities. In 2017, a priest was arrested in Marikina City for attempting to sleep with a 13-year-old girl. Like we said, it's not just that they're sodomite priests, they also go after young girls as well. They pray after them as well. And let's just talk about July of 2019. You say, that's the past. Let's just talk about this month. Let's just talk about a couple weeks ago, okay? This month, the Catholic Church confirmed it has relieved a priest in Pampanga for allegedly abusing a 17-year-old girl in a church-based center for women and children. The accused priest is Father Daniel Wall, who belongs to the Archdiocese of San Fernando in Pampanga. So just this month, you say, why? Because every single month there's some sort of scandal with the Catholic Church in our country alone. Not worldwide, but in our country alone. Okay? Now, here's the hypocrisy. Here's some hypocrisy with the Philippines in dealing with problems such as this. And let me say this, that a lot of the information I got was from a book that President Duterte recommended, The Altar of Secrets. I actually posted it on Facebook because there's a PDF online. On the PDF, it's like 800 pages. And I read all of it and then skimmed the part that I didn't have time to read. But a lot of the information I'm just getting from here, and I'm intentionally not really naming too many names because I don't really know the legality of that. I'm just kind of telling you the general situation. But you know what? Honestly, I'd recommend the book. It shows just in our country the scandals that have taken place. And obviously, he hates the Catholic Church. And for good reason. But basically, if a priest is involved in a homosexual relation and the child is less than 12 years old. Now, once again, if the child is less than 12 years old, that's called being a pedophile and forcing a young child that's innocent. That is not, there's just these two gay guys who had a relationship for a couple years. No, that's called being a pedophile.
Right.
Okay? And what's said is that if the child is less than 12 years old, the guideline mandates that automatic dismissal of gay priests should be considered. If they're less than 12 years old, it should be considered that we get rid of the priest, but not automatic. I mean, what in the world? It's like, how is that not automatic dismissal? But basically, if that happens, it's really bad. It's talagang masama. It's so bad.
Right.
that we should consider getting rid of the priest. It's like, what a joke. So a lot of these priests have been guilty of these crimes on innocent children, and it's known, and they say, you know what? We're going to give him a pass and let him still be the priest. That's throughout the Philippines. I'm just talking about the Philippines. I'm not talking about worldwide where it's the same thing. In the Philippines, that's the reality of the Catholic priests here in the Catholic Church. And then there was a person, I'm not going to name his name, this is all in the book, but the person was basically the head in Pampanga. In this book, it talks about it. He argued that they should automatically be removed, priests, if they have a child out of wedlock. He said the reason why they should be removed as priests is because they're responsible to raise those kids. Okay? And that makes sense. Basically what he's saying is if a priest has a child, because remember they're not supposed to be married, if they have a child, then basically they should no longer be the bishop because it's a shame for a priest to have a child because they're not allowed to be married. So basically they can't let that child be with the priest, the father. They have to remove that child. That's what the Catholic Church does because remember they're against priests being married, right?
Yeah.
So basically if they have a wife or they have a family there, it's going to be a shame to the Catholic Church. So if a priest fathers a child out of wedlock, they remove that child from the priest. Where do they go? They go to the orphanages. This is what takes place. They hide that child, or the child is raised by the mom and there is no father. And so basically the person said, hey, if they have a child, they should be removed because if God gave them a child, they are forced to raise that child. That is their job. I agree with that. There's a problem though. There's too many priests in Pampanga having kids out of wedlock.
Right.
They didn't have enough people literally to run those churches. Look, it's a very common thing that takes place. You say, I didn't know this. You don't know it because they hide the scandal.
Right.
It's the Catholic Code of Omerta. Basically, they have kids out of wedlock. I mean, they're not married. They're committing adultery or just, fornication. They have children, and what do? They just remove those children before anyone can find out about it. That's what they do. They hide it. This is reality, and it's like this anywhere in the world, but I'm just talking to you about the Philippines. That is the truth. And so let me go on to the next page here. And there's something called the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, the CBCP. And so basically, I'm not going to read this whole article, but basically what it teaches in here is that if there's somebody who accuses the priest of being guilty of being a pedophile or something like that, basically, if it's proven that the priest is guilty, they still try to hide the scandal. This is the Catholic Code of Omerta. But if it turns out that the child was lying, or they determine in court that the priest is innocent, the child in that family must publicly apologize. Must publicly apologize to the priest for shaming his name. What ends up taking place? Well, first off, when a child gets molested, they're already embarrassed about it anyway. And they don't want to say anything about it.
Yeah.
They don't want to say anything about it. But not only that, if the family finds out about it, if they go to court about it, and it turns out that the court says innocent to the priest, which is probably going to happen, they have to publicly apologize, and even a countersuit could happen when they owe the church money, where they owe the priest money. You know what ends up taking place? Nobody's going to mention anything that takes place. If they get molested, nobody's going to say anything. You say, why? Because you're not going to beat the Catholic Church here in the Philippines. What's the most powerful institution in the Philippines? The Catholic Church. What does the Catholic Church teach? The Catholic Code of Omerta. So basically, if something happens to you, well, tough luck. Don't say anything about it because you're probably going to lose in court. You're probably not going to win that case. That is the truth. There is, and I'm not going to name the names here either. This is all in this book. But there was basically a man who ended up becoming one of the head archbishops in this area. And this is what he said. He said, we will provide support to children fathered by priests. And so what this guy says is, hey, if priests have kids out of wedlock, we're going to provide financial support. And he's talking to someone who's a retired archbishop, who basically used to be heading up this area here in the Philippines. And then the retired archbishop's eyes widened, and he looked shocked. So the other person who takes over says, hey, in my area, if these priests have kids out of wedlock, we are going to financially provide and support those kids. And the retired archbishop is like, what? And this is what he said. He said, but Your Excellency, if you do that, you will be responsible for the bankruptcy of the Catholic Church in the Philippines. Basically, we don't have enough money to support all these kids that are being fathered out of wedlock. You say, I didn't know it took place that much. It takes place a lot in this country.
Right.
You don't know it because they hide the scandal. That's the truth.
Amen.
You're going to be responsible for bankrupting the Catholic Church. And look, this is the truth about it. Now let me give you guys a couple trivia questions. And I already gave a couple of you guys the answer, so if I gave you the answer, you can't give the answer. But I'll give you the reason why for the answer here in the question. The first question is this. What province do you think has the highest reported percentage of cases of the priests involved in a sexual scandal? What province? If you know the answer, don't answer. Anybody have a guess? What province? Anybody? No guesses?
Pampanga.
Pampanga's the answer. Okay? What city in Pampanga has the highest percentage? Any guesses? San Fernando. This makes perfect sense. You say, why? Let me ask you, what province is the most Catholic here in the Philippines? Pampanga. What city do they nail themselves to crosses? More than any other city. It happens in our place, but just a little bit compared to San Fernando. That's the big area. The area where they have the highest percentage is the area that's the most Catholic. It's just a coincidence, isn't it? This religion that's so corrupt, and there's all this violence and murders and all these scandals, it just so happens that the city that is the most Catholic and the most religious has the highest percentage. You say, how much? 35 priests out of just over 100. According to this book, about 1 out of every 3 priests. That is known. 1 out of every 3 priests. Now, the truth is, it's probably 3 out of 3. But 1 out of 3 is known. It's the highest percentage. It makes sense. Among the 86 archdioceses, prelatures, and apostolic vicariates in the country, the Diocese of San Fernando Pampanga stands out. It has the highest number of priests engaged in sexual relationships. According to church sources, in Pampanga, almost 1/3 of its more than 100 priests have been found to have illicit relations. In 2004, what they found was 35 out of just over 100. Now turn to 1 Timothy 3. 1 Timothy 3. And so in our country, what they've done is they've embraced just hiding scandals. That's the reason why you don't always hear about it. You see it on the newspapers all the time and stuff like that. But you have to realize that's a small percentage of everything that's going on. They basically have a way of just kind of hiding the scandals, okay? Just in our country. But it's not just with sexual scandals, but in our country, there have been a ton of financial scandals with the Catholic Church in our country. Now the Bible says in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2, a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy lucre. Notice how it says, not greedy of filthy lucre. Basically, getting money a wrong way, in a legal way. Basically, these people that are in positions of power, they shouldn't be covetous after having money.
Right.
They shouldn't say, well, I want to be a priest because, in college you're trying to figure out, hey, what major should I, go into? What degree should I get? And what you're thinking is, what degree is going to give me the most money? Right. Look, it shouldn't be like, I was thinking about, what do I want to do with my life? How can I make a lot of money? I really think being a Catholic priest. I'm going to be a Catholic priest. That is my opportunity to make it big in life. Be a Catholic priest and I can make a lot of money. But a lot of Catholic priests do that. Look at verse number 8. Likewise must the deacons be grave, not double-tongued, and not given to much wine, not greedy of filthy lucre. Turn to Titus 1. Titus 1. There's this theme that always comes up, that people that are in positions of religious leadership, they should not be greedy of filthy lucre.
Right.
Lucre. Okay? Now the truth is, with false prophets, they are greedy of filthy lucre.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, most pastors, most church leaders, most of them are corrupt people. And quite honestly, a lot of people use religion as a means to make money.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a good way to make money. If you are willing to be a false prophet and just damn your soul to hell, then hey, it's a good way to make money. Become a pastor, become a priest, and you can find ways, because people will automatically trust you. And you can basically steal money from people and not care about them, and they say, man, he's a godly person, Tom. and they can do whatever they want. And that is what people do. And throughout the Bible, you see the Bible talks about them being greedy dogs.
Right.
That's the description of false prophets. Titus 1 verse 7. For a bishop must be blameless as a steward of God, not self-willed, not soon angry, not given to wine, no striker, not given to filthy lucre. Verses 10 and 11. For there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake. Basically, two religious leaders. God says with his men of God, they cannot be greedy of filthy lucre. But then you look at the other side, and they teach things they shouldn't teach.
Yeah.
They ought not. Why? For filthy lucre's sake. That's the reason why pastors will say, hey, your best life now. And just try to preach this positive only message. You know why they're doing that? Because they do not care about you, and they want your money.
Right.
The best way to get people's money is just pat them on the back and say, man, you're such a godly person, you're doing such a great job, and never say anything negative about them.
Yeah.
No matter what they do, don't criticize anything. But when it comes to being a pastor, preaching sermons, you must preach what the Bible says.
Right.
Turn to 1 Peter 5. 1 Peter 5. And in 1 Peter chapter 5, we're going to see this one more time in verses 1 and 2. The Bible reads, the elders which are among you I exhort, whom also an elder, and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. Feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. See, it's a very common thing when the Bible says they should not be greedy of filthy lucre. But you might say, but priests make very low salaries, though. They don't make a lot of money. Well, it's true that they make low salaries. But they make a lot of money off the rituals that they do. Okay, I mentioned it last week, but they have low salaries, but they make money every time they do an infant baptism. They get money for that. They get money when they operate a Holy Communion. Okay? So basically, yeah, their salary's really low, but as long as they do this Holy Communion, hey, here's some money for operating the Holy Communion. Not only that, they get a lot of donations from people, as when your child is baptized as a baby, oftentimes they'll give you like a 2,500 peso. It's a big event here in the Philippines.
Right.
If you're Catholic and your baby's being baptized and you're embracing the Catholic Church, they will literally give a lot of money to the priest. And then it's very easy for the priest to just take that money and just put it in his pocket. I mean, he has a little salary, but he did 5 infant baptisms this week. And he got paid 1,000 pesos for each one of them. Well, all of a sudden, 5,000 pesos in a week, just for doing 5 infant baptisms, there's a lot of money there.
Right.
And so, yeah, he's got a low salary, but when you look at the priests here in the Philippines, quite a large percentage of them have cars.
Yeah.
Quite a large percentage of them seem to have quite a bit of money. You say, why? They have a low salary, but you know what? They're getting a lot of money. There's also another thing that the Philippines is kind of famous for within Catholic religions in various countries, is when it comes to natural disasters that happen, for example, if a typhoon takes place or something like that, the Catholic Church always steps in and they'll organize all this money donation that will come in. And they'll be doing it in order to give to the relief of that disaster. But what the Catholic Church in this country has perfected, because here's what you have to understand. When a big disaster takes place, a lot of organizations are willing to donate money and chip in. There's a lot of governmental organizations. What the Catholic Church has done in this country, and they're famous for it, and they're very good, is they basically wait long enough where they already have the donation money they need. So basically, they get a lot of donation money when it's already too late and other organizations have already paid what they needed. And then what do? We are saving this for future disasters that take place. That's what they do. I'm not making this up. That is what they do. They wait longer, because if you wait too long, people are going to say, the Catholic Church didn't even help. So what they do is they wait long enough where they don't need the money, but they don't go too long where people criticize them. They'll basically just say, hey, we're trying to organize money. And when they finally organize all the money, look, if a major typhoon happens, that area needs the money like now.
Right. Yeah.
You can't say, well, we're just kind of waiting a couple weeks to get all the donation money. No, they need the money now. And so they basically wait, and then they hold the money for future disasters that take place. That's what they do in the Philippines. That's true. And so, a few big scandals that have come with the Catholic Church financially is the Monte de Piedad mid-90s bank scandal. You can read more online about it. There's a lot of information. And the Radio Veritas scandal. And basically in these scandals, they basically raise a lot of money, and yet somehow very little of that money is actually used to fix what they said is going to be used for. Basically they raise, 50 million pesos, and like 40 million of that pesos goes to the Catholic Church helping organize it. And very little money actually goes to what people think that they're giving to. That is what they've done, and that is what they always do. But another thing they very often do is they have very sketchy accounting records with the Catholic Church. See, when it comes to having a church, you need to have good records. You need to be telling people how much money and keeping track of everything, scanning all the receipts. That is what you need to do as a business. And money comes in, and what do we do at our church? We have a few people count the money, they sign off on it, they both check, and we have all the information there. All of the accounting stuff we have, it is all scanned, it's on a Dropbox account, it's something that Pastor Ramirez has access to, because we're not trying to hide anything. We don't get the offering and just keep no record, say, okay, thanks, just give me the money, and I'll deal with it. No, you actually have people that keep track of it and write it down so the information's there. Right. And we do give reports, and we'll give another one. We gave one before of where all the money's going to. You say, why? Because you have to be doing things legally.
Right.
But see, what will happen is they get a lot of money that comes in, and they don't really count their offerings. So basically, a lot of the money that comes into Catholic churches goes right into the priest's pockets. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows about it. And they get away with it. Why do they get away with it? Well, because they rule this country. Because they're the powerful institution in this country. They get away with it. That's the truth. There's been so many financial scandals when it comes to the Catholic Church. The Bible says the truth shall make you free. Why are you preaching about this? Because we live in the Philippines, and this is the religion of our country, and the Bible says the truth shall make you free.
Yeah.
You need to be aware of the truth of the Catholic Church. You need to know about the situation with Ferdinand Magellan, Jose Rizal. You need to know the truth about it. Right. You need to know the truth. The next time there's a big disaster, a big typhoon that takes place, look, the exact same thing that's going to happen, that always happens. Because it's a corrupt church, and nothing good is coming out of the Catholic Church. Right. The only thing good about the Catholic Church is, quite honestly, they get saved very easily. Right. And what we can do, we're not going to topple the Catholic Church here in the Philippines. We're not trying to topple the Catholic Church. What we're trying to do is go soul winning as much as possible, bring new people into church, Amen. And teach them what the Bible says, because we can't fight some legal battle. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against spiritual wickedness. That's what we're fighting. And so how do we fight that battle? We fight it by going soul winning, bring them to church, and teach them what the Bible says. Because if we try to go and fight these battles out there, look, there's so many false religions. We did a sermon series on the Catholic Church. There's other false religions out there in this country. And if we try to fight those battles, we're going to end up dead. That's not worth that fight. What we need to do is go soul winning and build up a growing and thriving church. Let's close in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to be here.